Britain has produced some of the most celebrated automobiles in automotive history. The Jaguar E-Type, the Mini, the Land Rover Defender, machines that define generations and earn genuine international respect. Yet for every triumph, there exists a corresponding failure, and the British motor industry has, at various points, demonstrated a remarkable capacity for squandering opportunity, undermining its own engineering talent, and delivering products to the public that were simply not fit for purpose. These are the cars that embarrassed manufacturers, frustrated owners, and in several cases, accelerated the decline of the very brands that produced them. Today, we count down the 10 worst British cars ever built, 10 vehicles that represent missed opportunities, poor decisions, and in some cases, industrial negligence on a considerable scale. Before we get stuck in, give the video a like and subscribe to Britain Rewind if classic cars are your thing. Every entry on this list caused damage, but number 1 stands in a category entirely its own. Let us begin with number 10. Number 10, Austin Allegro. Launched in 1973, the Austin Allegro was intended to replace the successful 1100 and 1300 range as a practical, modern family saloon that would keep British Leyland competitive in an increasingly demanding market. Expectations were reasonable given its predecessor's strong sales record. However, the Allegro arrived with poor aerodynamics, a deeply unpopular quartic steering wheel, and build quality that was considered inadequate even by the standards of the era. Panels were misaligned, water ingress was common, and early examples suffered from rear subframe corrosion within a distressingly short period of ownership. Owners found themselves returning to dealerships with persistent and recurring faults. The Allegro was widely mocked by the motoring press and became something of a cultural shorthand for industrial mediocrity. It damaged British Leyland's domestic reputation at a time when it could least afford such negative attention. Number 9, Hillman Imp. Launched in 1963, the Hillman Imp was Rootes Group's answer to the Mini, intended to offer a lightweight, economical alternative for British drivers seeking an affordable and nimble small car. The rear-engined configuration generated genuine early interest. However, the Imp was plagued from the outset by a troublesome aluminium engine derived from a Coventry Climax design, which proved poorly suited to everyday use. Head gasket failures were alarmingly frequent, the cooling system demanded constant attention, and carburation problems frustrated owners who expected reliable daily transport. Production was relocated to a new Scottish factory at Linwood, where workforce inexperience contributed to inconsistent build standards. Dealer networks struggled to service the unconventional drivetrain competently. The Imp never recovered commercially, selling well below projections, and its failure contributed significantly to the broader financial difficulties that would eventually engulf the Rootes Group entirely. Number 8, Triumph TR7. Launched in 1975, the Triumph TR7 was positioned as the future of British sports car manufacturing, intended to capture the American market with a bold wedge-shaped design and modern engineering. Given the TR lineage and Triumph's established credibility in the sports car sector, expectations from both dealers and enthusiasts were genuinely high. What emerged, however, was a car undermined by serious reliability failings and the industrial unrest that characterized its peak factory production years. Electrical faults, oil leaks, and structural corrosion appeared early in ownership cycles. The fixed head configuration drew immediate criticism, and the absence of a convertible variant at launch alienated a core segment of the target audience. American buyers, who were vital to commercial success, returned cars in significant numbers. The TR7 inflicted lasting reputational damage on the Triumph marque and undermined confidence in British sports car production at a critical commercial moment. Number 7, Morris Marina. Launched in 1971, the Morris Marina was conceived as a straightforward, conventional family car capable of competing with Ford's Cortina in the important fleet and private buyer markets. British Leyland sales expectations were considerable. The Marina, however, was built around an outdated mechanical platform, using components from the Morris Minor that were already considered antiquated at the point of launch. Handling was widely criticized as unpredictable, with a tendency toward oversteer that caught inexperienced drivers without warning. Build quality was inconsistent across production runs, and corrosion established itself as a persistent long-term concern. Fleet buyers gradually migrated toward Ford and Vauxhall products that offered greater reliability and better residual values. The Marina became a symbol of British Leyland's tendency to produce acceptable rather than competitive products, reinforcing a narrative of corporate complacency that would shadow the organization throughout the decade. Number 6. Reliant Robin. Launched in 1973 in its most recognized form, the Reliant Robin occupied an unusual position in the British market, offering a three-wheeled configuration that allowed owners to drive on a motorcycle license and pay reduced road tax. The commercial logic was understandable. The engineering reality, however, was deeply problematic. The Robin single front wheel created handling characteristics that were genuinely hazardous, particularly during cornering at moderate speeds, where the vehicle demonstrated a pronounced tendency to overturn. The fiberglass body construction, while lightweight, offered minimal crash protection by any reasonable assessment. Owners accepted significant safety compromises in exchange for fiscal savings. Insurance companies and road safety organizations raised concerns that were never adequately addressed. The Robin's notoriety ultimately overshadowed whatever practical utility it offered, and its reputation for instability became so firmly established that it permanently limited any prospect of broader market acceptance. Number 5. Austin Maxi. Launched in 1969, the Austin Maxi was a genuinely ambitious project, representing British Leyland's first 5-door hatchback and intended to demonstrate that the organization could produce innovative, practical, and competitive European-style family transport. The concept was credible and the packaging genuinely forward-thinking for its time. However, the Maxi arrived with an extraordinarily poor gear change mechanism that drew immediate and sustained criticism from every motoring publication that tested the car. The Hydrogas suspension, while technically interesting, contributed to handling responses that drivers found difficult to interpret with confidence. Engine oil consumption was excessive, and build finishing fell below what the buying public considered acceptable. The car improved in later development, but the initial damage to its commercial prospects was irreversible. The Maxi represented a recurring British Leyland pattern: sound ideas compromised by inadequate development time and insufficient quality control before public release. Number 4. Princess or Ambassador. Launched in 1975 as the 18-22 series before being renamed Princess, this British Leyland executive offering was designed to challenge the Ford Granada and Rover ST1 in the important upper-medium sector. The wedge styling generated genuine initial interest. Mechanically, however, the Princess was beset by the reliability failings characteristic of its manufacturer during this period. The Hydrogas interconnected suspension, shared with other British Leyland products, provided an unusual ride quality that polarized opinion decisively. Electrical systems were unreliable with considerable frequency, and long-term corrosion resistance was poor. Fleet operators who adopted the car in reasonable numbers found maintenance costs difficult to justify against competitive alternatives. Renamed Ambassador in 1982 with modest improvements, the car never achieved meaningful commercial momentum. Its failure reinforced the growing perception among fleet and private buyers that British Leyland's mainstream products could not consistently match continental European standards of build quality and ownership dependability. Number 3. Delorean DMC 12. Launched in 1981, the Delorean DMC 12 was assembled at a purpose-built factory in Dunmurry, Northern Ireland, funded substantially by British government investment that amounted to tens of millions of pounds of public money. The political intention was sound: employment generation in a region experiencing severe economic difficulty. The automotive reality was catastrophic. The stainless steel-bodied, gull-winged coupe was underpowered, with a Peugeot Renault Volvo V6 engine producing insufficient performance for the car's considerable weight. Build quality at the Belfast facility was inconsistent, and American buyers, the primary market, found the driving experience underwhelming. The company collapsed in 1982 following the arrest of John Delorean on drug trafficking charges, though he was subsequently acquitted. The financial loss sustained by the British government was substantial. The entire episode became a cautionary study in politically motivated industrial investment overriding sound automotive and commercial judgment. Number 2. Rover City Rover. Launched in 2003, the Rover City Rover represented Milgram Rover's attempt to compete in the growing city car segment at a moment when the company's financial position was deteriorating with some urgency. The strategy of rebadging the Indian-manufactured Tata Indica was commercially understandable but industrially disastrous. The City Rover arrived in British showrooms priced at a level that placed it in direct competition with the Ford Fiesta and Volkswagen Polo, cars that comprehensively outclassed it in every meaningful category. Build quality was considered poor even by modest expectations, interior materials were visibly substandard, and the driving dynamics generated some of the most critical press assessments of any car sold in Britain during the decade. Customers were largely unconvinced, and sales figures were negligible. The City Rover accelerated the erosion of whatever residual brand credibility Milgram Rover retained and served as a public demonstration of a manufacturer in irreversible decline. Number 1. Austin Maestro. Launched in 1983, the Austin Maestro arrived carrying the full weight of British Leyland's hopes for commercial recovery. It was positioned as a modern, technologically advanced family hatchback, featuring a synthesized voice warning system that was intended to convey sophistication but instead attracted widespread public ridicule. High expectations were grounded in genuine need. The company required a significant sales success to arrest years of financial deterioration. What followed was a vehicle that combined adequate but uninspiring engineering with build quality that remained stubbornly below European competitive standards. Electrical failures were common, long-term reliability was inconsistent, and the voice system became an object of sustained public mockery that undermined any serious marketing message. Owners reported persistent minor faults that accumulated into significant frustration. Fleet buyers continued their migration toward continental alternatives. The Maestro's failure was not merely one car's shortcoming, it represented the definitive confirmation that British Leyland had lost its ability to produce vehicles capable of competing credibly in the modern European marketplace, and no subsequent recovery ever truly materialized. The cars on this list did not fail by accident. They failed because of systemic pressures, industrial unrest, underinvestment, political interference, rushed development cycles, and a persistent reluctance to prioritize quality over production volume. The British motor industry of the post-war decades possessed genuine engineering talent and a workforce with considerable skill, yet those advantages were repeatedly undermined by decisions made at boardroom and government level that prioritized short-term economics over long-term credibility. What these 10 cars share is not simply mechanical inadequacy, they share the consequences of an industry that could not, or would not, organize itself effectively enough to compete with manufacturers in Germany, Japan, and France who were operating with greater discipline and strategic coherence. If you want to explore more of Britain's remarkable and often turbulent automotive history, there is a great deal more to discover on this channel. If this video brought back some memories, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, I will see you in the next one.